What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 218 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And on today's episode, we have John Pajak. He is a podcast host of the Profits with Pajak podcast and a business owner in the lawn care space. And we're happy to have him on to talk about, personally, my favorite topic, talking about your numbers, but getting into a deeper conversation on that. We start off with talking about his history in the business, beginning with his lawn care business and then eventually coming back and restarting, which opens up a wide variety of conversations there, as well as getting into overhead recovery systems, his preference on those as well. And before we get into today's episode, let's thank our sponsors, InLight Outdoor Lighting. If you're looking for outdoor lighting in your hardscaping business, reach out to InLight Outdoor Lighting at InLight Design on Instagram. That's INLITE Design on Instagram. At the very least, give them a follow to follow along with the inspiration that they post with their photos on their feed, or reach out to them to get that conversation started to get outdoor lighting in your projects. And Cycle CPA, talking about knowing your numbers. If you need bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cycle_CPA on Instagram. Also give them a follow because they've got great educational content that they post there, or go to their website, cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for $200 off their services there. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Today, we're joined by John Pajak. He's the host of Profits with Pajak, a podcast that I've been listening to recently. And as you all may know, I love knowing your numbers and all that. So, John, it's great to have you as a guest here. He's also got johnpajak.com, budgets, break-evens, bottom lines, and other business development workshops there if you are looking to know your numbers a little bit more. John, thank you so much for taking the time here.
Oh, thanks, Michael. I appreciate you having me on. And I'm here for your bidding. So whatever you would like to know or discuss today, I'd be happy to share that with you and your audience.
I am excited because, as my audience may know, I love knowing your numbers. I like talking financials and all that. So it's always great to have somebody to have to be able to bounce ideas off of. And one such thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is overhead recovery systems. So we'll get into that as well as other things with knowing your numbers. But before then, John, let's get to know a little bit more about you, how you got started in the green industry and what brought you here today. Feel free to take that wherever you want. And I'm sure I'm going to have some follow-up questions from there.
Sure. I'll make it very brief because I'm sure people are tired of hearing about my life story so far, but here's I've been in this industry for over 20 years. I forget now, it's 23, maybe 24. It doesn't even matter. I don't know what year it is anymore. But I started out as just working in the industry, and I decided at one point in time that, hey, this sounds like a great idea. Let me start my own. I failed. I actually got out of the business for a little while. I was a college instructor, and then I got into construction. And I know there's a whole lot of whoa, why are you talking about all this crazy stuff? It's like you're jumping all over the place, right? Well, there's a point to it. Once I got out of construction, I started to decide. Well, I was still in construction. And things were starting to change for me. And I decided, you know what? I wanted to spend more time with family. I didn't want to get the risk of injury like I was in the construction field. So I was like, you know what? I never got critically injured trying to mow lawns or whatever. So I decided to start a lawn care business again. And from that, I still have a successful lawn care business here in Northwest Indiana, but over the time, I started realizing that I had a set of skills built up over my entire career to where I could actually help other business owners grow their business in the right way. And that's why I mentioned when I was an instructor and why I had a failed business in the first place. And then I went on to be a college instructor. And during that tenure, I developed some skills to actually communicate with people And then when I went into construction, I was not only I started out as a laborer, but then when I was in the office, I was doing a lot of estimate work. And we were talking about, I was working for a multi-million dollar construction company, and we were doing big things. We were in, the oil refinery where we're at and the steel mills. And some of these projects were multi-million dollar projects that I was estimating on. So kind of we're starting to see how this stew is getting put together, right? Lots of flavors, lots of levels of flavor here. When I got back into lawn care, I thought that I was just going to build this, one-stop shop, mowing, hardscaping, landscaping, everything under the sun was going to be in this business. But as time went by, I specialized just in fertilization and weed control. And then because I want to share with people and I like to help people, that's where the coaching started coming from. And before I knew it, it just turned into helping people in Facebook groups to, wow, a lot of my time is being dedicated to this. And I've helped a lot of businesses grow. So I should turn this into a coaching gig in a sense. So currently I still run, the lawn care business, but I also do one way of sharing is through the Profits of the Pajak podcast. And then I still do a lot of one-on-one coaching with people. So that's hopefully that kind of sums everything up. I know it's a very abbreviated. It's a really
Absolutely.
They're like, whoa, man, that's a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. So what's the whole point of it? Well, the whole point is I basically take owner operators and medium-sized companies. I could go into their numbers and really help them identify like where their sweet spots are, how to price their services appropriately and profitably every time.
Thank you for that. I'm sure long time range, but summed up very shortly here for us there. There's a few things I want to touch on here. Your initial business, where you mentioned a couple times there that it failed, does it have to do with knowing your numbers and not knowing your numbers back then? Or do you want to get into why it ended up failing in the process there?
Yeah, I was a really good technician. I thought because, my current employer, who was a good role model to me, I just started thinking, I'm like, geez, if he's doing this, I could do this. And it turned out I wasn't focusing on the right things. I didn't know what my numbers were. I didn't have any kind of system built into place. And what I mean by systems is it's just really like standard operating procedures. Like we say systems, we say standard operating SOPs, we say all these things, right? But to break it down, it's like, what's your habit? What's your ritual? When you pull up to a place, what's the first thing you do? People are like, oh, it doesn't have to be complicated. It's just like, what's the very first thing we do? We have in our employee handbook, it's the very first thing we do is make sure you're at the right house. Before you even get out of the truck and load anything, make sure the address on the app is the same as the one that you just pulled up to. And then from there, it's like, okay, what do we do? What are we here for? Okay, we're here for this this service. Okay, what's the procedure? Anyway, long story short, without getting complicated about it, it's just like when you get up in the morning, what's your morning routine look like? You probably get out of bed, wipe your eyes, go to the bathroom, shave, I don't know what you do, but it's just kind of those steps you need to take. So what happened with my first company, which wasn't a company, it wasn't a company at all. It was just, I was the proverbial truck, chucking the truck, but I thought I knew it because I had a little bit of a leg up because I ended up, I had some equipment, and then I was actually using some of the equipment from my employer too. So it looked like I was, big shot, Uh, when actuality, I had no idea how to how to really be a business owner.
Right.
It was like when it came to invoicing and everything else, it was struggle because this is in the 90s, and yeah, this is in the 90s, early 2000s maybe. And everything, we didn't have all the CRMs and apps and all the cool technical things that we have nowadays. So everything was still, carbon paper. And I thought I was big time when I finally had some business cards made up and a couple, I had the three uh, carbon paper things for invoices. Uh, but anyway, not to bore everybody about it, but long story short, I just didn't know the numbers that I actually needed. Uh, I didn't have that knowledge of how to price things properly and how to allocate the funds that I was bringing in for growth.
Mm-hmm.
It was just more like I was taking that money in and turning that into um, my own income, my own paycheck, because that's kind of the mentality I was in at that time. I needed
Absolutely.
money. I made the money. I spent the money. I didn't put anything towards anything. And in the long run, because I didn't know those numbers, it just I just realized I couldn't maintain, I couldn't grow, and the best thing I could do was just to take whatever assets I had, which were just a few pieces of equipment, and sell them off.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you went back into construction after teaching there, uh, did you did things start to click there when you're in the construction field working for a larger company, that you know what, they have these systems in place and now I can borrow these systems, and when you go off on your own you can then start to understand how systems work into a startup business and what knowing your numbers actually means when you're estimating. Did that experience from the construction industry really translate when you start your second business?
They did, but the funny thing was, it didn't click. The culmination of all my experiences didn't really click until I started coaching. Once I got certified to
Mm.
as a financial coach, that's when everything I started looking back and going, "Oh, this is the path God wants me on," because I've experienced all these other things. So originally, to answer your question, I didn't really think too much about it when I was doing the bridge from construction into my new business. I just knew for a fact, like when I was doing the estimates for the construction company, yes, I picked up quite a few skills, but it wasn't a the decisions that were going through my mind. I wasn't like, oh well, I know this now, so I'm going to be better here. It just didn't click right away.
Right.
So the crazy thing is though, like when I was working for the construction company, we had several estimators, and the cool thing was, and this is just me puffing myself up a little here. You got to deflate me a little, okay, Mike? Just go ahead, pop a pin in me, so I'm not too bloated here. But um, the they started seeing the owners. Actually, they weren't even my owners; they were the just the supervisors. Um, uh, but anyway, they were noticing like whenever I did the bids, we would always be in the black because I would anticipate because not only that, I had a lot of experience in the field itself, and I could had the foresight to see the things that would like instead of having change orders like some of the other estimators had, I would already anticipate that. And then our jobs would work they would just flow a lot more easily because we wouldn't have to go back to the customer, our client, and say, oh, we ran into some unexpected things, and here we're going to have to add more onto your thing. Is like when I did it, I anticipated more of these things because of the experiences that I had, and I was able to see the whole scope of work and be like, all right, we're gonna drill this in. Now I wasn't perfect. I mean, there were sometimes we had to have change orders just because, we're digging in the ground and there's things that you just can't see. I don't care how, we'd have guys come out and x-ray the ground. They would come out there with all the equipment and check for voids and all these other things, but I don't care what service industry you're in, you're going to run into some unexpected things. But like I said, I had the ability to see a lot of these things beforehand. So when I gave an estimate, or a bid, it may be more expensive than everybody else's, but it was in the overall scope of things, it was pretty much right on the money. And instead of having to go back and ask for more money or, disappointing the customer because it's like, oh, well, you said it was going to be, 1.6 million and now it's going to be like 2 million because of all these changes, they're not happy. So anyway, from that, I could scale that to just about any service business and see what the not the objections are, but see the whole scope of work and then just be able to just dial in all those little variables.
Right.
That you are going to be pretty much on the money, and no matter what, you're going to be profitable.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned also financial coach certification. Is that personal finance, or what does that entail?
Originally, I went through two different courses. One was, most people might understand this, they'll be familiar with the name at least, but I went through a Dave Ramsey certification. So that was more for personal, the side. And then I ended up taking another course just to, get a little extra letters and stuff behind my name that was more oriented towards business. So now here's the thing. I am not a financial advisor. I am not somebody that's going to tell you like to invest or diversify your portfolio or anything like that. What originally, and like I've been doing this for years before I even thought about coaching, was I used to do a lot of personal budgets because one, I needed one for myself and for my household. But I've helped over the years, I've helped many friends and family get out of personal debt, and that way they could live the life that they want to live. And when it comes to business, though, it's not like apples and oranges, but when I budget for business, it's a little bit different than I budget for personal life. And one thing I'd like to just mention is, just because you build a budget for your business, I think before you do that, you should have a budget for your personal life first. And the main reason for that is, as business owners, there's going to be a lot of solopreneurs. There's going to be a lot of solo guys out there that are just kind of doing this on their own. We talk about one of the craziest things to me is when we start talking, or I start talking to a business owner and I say, well, what's your salary, or what do you pay yourself? And they're like, well, it's just me, so I don't need to pay myself. I'll just take the profits, whatever. And I'm like, no, I don't think. I'm like, no. And then I asked them, I'm like, where do you want to go with your business? Do you want to scale it? Do you want to just stay in the truck by yourself forever? Or what's your plan here? Because even if you're going to stay in the truck forever by yourself, you should have like a hard limit and say, this is what I'm paying myself per hour. Because, it's just like, it's like that corporate veil where your personal is your personal and your business is your business. Your business has to pay for your personal. So if you have a personal budget and you know what it costs for you to live, And whatever that number is, it's like, some guys I've talked to, they could live off of, 17 an hour, or some guys need 40 an hour. It doesn't, I don't judge. I'm not, whatever lifestyle you're trying to maintain, well, that's what you have to budget in your business budget as the payroll for at least you. And then, you have to budget for additional employees as well. But um, once you figure out that personal budget and you understand, okay, maybe I could lean things up. I don't have to have, steak dinner every single night, or, you know, we're not buying the $85,000 SUV just because the neighbors bought one, you know. But once you figure those things out, it makes it so much easier for you to like really start understanding what your business has to generate and what it truly costs for your business to stay, just open the doors every day. So that's it. Yeah, I think that's about. I don't know. Was I going somewhere else with that too? I don't.
I've got a few other questions.
Sure.
Which is why I asked you about the financial coaching. But since you brought up the Dave Ramsey, what's your thoughts on debt versus no debt in a business, not personal life?
The reason why I'm not an endorsed local provider for Dave Ramsey is because there are times when I would say that it might be beneficial to take on business debt. Now, in my personal life, we do not have debt except for our home. We don't use credit cards. We don't do the miles things. We don't do that stuff. Okay. That's whether you agree with that philosophy or not, that's up to you. I could just testify that over the past, trying to remember when I got completely debt free. It was before my wife and I got married. So I'm thinking around like maybe 2008, I think. Maybe 2005. Well, no, maybe around 2008 was when I finally got everything paid off and I was just a cash and carry guy. So whatever time difference that is at this point, 15 years, whatever, living life, personal life debt free has been excellent. I don't have to worry about I owe somebody anything. I could sleep better at night. If I pass tonight, God takes me home, I know that my family doesn't have debts that they have to pay. Now, with business, I think there's a little bit of leeway here because when you start looking at pieces of equipment, it would be, say you're getting an excavator and it's 150,000, right? We got, depending on what size excavator we're going to get, but we're talking some equipment that could rival some people's homes, in cost. If I needed that for my business in order to properly do the work, and it was something to where it was like I was using it so frequently that renting it was actually costing me more money. Because at first, if you're just getting into it, or if you're just moving into a different stage of your business, you might want to just rent the equipment. But when it comes to the point where you are spending so much money, you can't. It's almost like you can't save up fast enough for it, depending on how fast your business is moving. So that's like the only time I would be like, all right, if you're making that equipment pay not only for itself, but it's building, I want to say equity in a sense, but it's allowing you to get into more jobs, which is making you more profitable, then go ahead and get that, finance that machine, but put it on an advanced payment schedule. So if you get a loan and it's, 5 years or whatever it might be, instead of taking that entire time to pay that thing off, I mean, I've seen some loans are like 7-8 years now. But I would suggest paying that off at an accelerated rate, work that into your pricing. so that instead of it being the 5 or let's just say 5 years, okay, I would say get that thing paid off in 3 years, or plan to have it paid off in 3 years. Even though the machine might last you much longer than that, especially with good maintenance and everything, which is an additional cost. You got to remind yourself, it's not just the purchase price of the machine. There's the operating expense of that machine. So we're talking fuel, gas, oil, grease, parts, whatever it is. There's a lot of expenses that go into just operating that piece of equipment. But if it's making you more money, then that's the only time I would really take debt out on it. I tend to just, I'm almost at the point now where we could just say we're going to make a decision on whether we're going to purchase a new piece of equipment, and then we just almost have the cash for it. So I'm not trying to say like everything's financed, but there comes a point in your business, especially if you're strategic about it, to where you could grow your business, still keep up with the growth of the business as if you're booming out and everything, but still be able to pay things in cash. So it requires strategic and strict budgeting to make that happen. And I know, I'm sorry, Michael, I'm kind of rattling on here, but I say this a lot. People think when they hear the word budget, they start to frown and they start to get upset about it. They're like, oh, this guy's going to tell me I can't spend money on anything. It's like, no. The budget gives you freedom. It allows you, if you say we're going to have an excavator fund, and we keep putting money into this, we figure it all out, and we're putting a certain percentage towards this, or for every job that we do, we're going to at least put a chunk of money in there, or part of the profits go into that fund, whatever it is. It's like, once you start doing that, it gives you the permission to spend that money. But you're only spending it on that. You're not spending it on like, hey, we're going to, pimp out my regular ride and, put some rims on it and put a Carolina squat on a pickup truck, which is the worst looking thing in the world.
You work hard to build a successful business, and because of this, it is important to work with companies that you can trust, rely on, and whose missions are to give you the highest quality product and customer support. Low voltage outdoor lighting is one of the easiest ways for you to grow your business and increase revenue. Using lighting can make you more profit, add that wow factor, and make your business stand out. Whether you are already using outdoor lighting in your hardscape projects or not, it's time you check out InLight Outdoor Lighting. As a professional hardscaper, we know that you need efficient installs, less callbacks, and premium products to have a successful and growing business. InLight's got you covered. They've created some of the most premium and unique lighting on the market to make your project stand out and wow your clients with their unmatched light quality. It gets better. InLight has an unbeatable customer support team, provides many educational resources like online and in-person training, installation videos, and so much more. They care about your business growth and will be with you every step of the way. For more information on how InLight can help you grow your business, check them out on Instagram at InLight Design. That's at INLITE Design on Instagram. DM them to find out how to put more money in your pocket this season. Now back to the podcast. Continuing one more thing about the personal side of finances. And I'm curious as to your thoughts if somebody was to come to you, or maybe just you yourself personally, and they have some excess funds and they think, where should I invest this? that gives me the best bang for my buck, or is the best for me myself? Should they put it into their business where they can confidently say that they'll get a certain percent of return back to them, or should they diversify and invest outside of their business? What are your thoughts on this as a personal financial coach, as well as somebody who owns and operates their own business?
Are you talking about just profits, or are you just talking about?
Yeah. So once you get to, say somebody's actually paying themselves a salary and then they've got profits left over, whatever they do with those profits, but maybe they are looking at, they just have a lump sum of money and they're trying to decide, well, I can put it back into the business and invest it into myself, or I can diversify and invest outside of the business, whatever that might look like, real estate, stocks, bonds, whatever that might be.
Right. Before, like the way that we operate and the way that I like to operate is when we get profits from the business, it then gets filtered to us.
Mm-hmm.
However, you like just say me. I'm going to say it comes to me. But before it even gets to me, what I do is I look at it and I'm like, all right, if this is truly like, true profit, these are, your actual net profits. What I do is I will keep a certain percentage just for the business, so it reinvests in the business. That way, there's always like a growth fund. Depending on how much profit we make, we're pretty predictable, like with our profits, because the pricing and everything that we have, the volume of work that we have is consistent. So just by looking at a glance, I could pretty much tell you what next this upcoming quarter, actually this upcoming month, I could pretty much tell you how much profit we're going to have. So right from the get, I take a certain percentage of the profits and keep them for the business. That way, that money that the profits are really the gift of all the blood, sweat, tears, and years that you've put into your business. So, obviously you want to keep the business growing. You want to keep it healthy. You keep a certain amount for the business itself. Then when it comes to me, when I'm taking my share, which I could take 100% of it if I chose to, but I leave a bit in there. The first thing I do with any profits, I tithe. I'm a Christian. I believe, I love God. Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And so right off the rip, 10% is going to my church. After that, I will break it down. I'm like, you know what? Some of these profits are going to go towards just something fun. And I know that, that's the whole point. I don't go out and buy like Ski-Doos and ATVs and things like that. But what I like to do is I like to put money to the side so that my family and I could have, little adventures. They don't have to be big trips or anything like that, but just something that's fun for us to celebrate our profit. And then from there, it's not like I try not to hoard any money. As far as like you're responsible. You put money to the side for savings, or like I have a daughter, so there's a little college fund here. But from there, that when I start looking at that, once that's in my realm, right? It's not in the business's realm. It's in my personal life. My wife and I usually discuss things, and we're like, what can we do? Is there another revenue stream that we might be able to tap into? It's like we could take this money and say, that's a wonderful thing about profits. You could use them for anything. It's like we could redo parts of the house if we need to. We could, maybe there's something unexpected that popped up. It's like, oh, yep, look, we just happen to have the exact same amount of money that we need to pay for this unexpected thing. Or what I find a lot of times is where I will sit there and go, all right, maybe we can make this, we should make this money work for us. And again, I don't dabble in the stock market or anything like that. I find that by turning the profits into a tangible asset, or something that is, it's either going to maintain its value or it's going to increase in value. So that could be just about anything. I mean, sometimes it's like, oh, I'm going to look for another investment as far as what's another business opportunity that we might be able to get into that's going to make more money on top of this. So it's hard, when it comes to personal finances, I don't generally consult people on that type of thing. Usually, it's within their own business with the business development workshops that I host. That's when it's like, look, you want to maybe you have a certain size business and you only focus on like one or two services, which is actually ideal. I really recommend, especially if guys are first starting out, try just one. Do one thing. Do it good. Do it really good until you get better at it. And then once you it's like seamless, like you and all of your people could do this work in their sleep as well as manage it, because it's not just about being a technician, it's about being a business owner and managing that work. Once you get that, once that service is like no brainer, like everybody on the team could do not only the work, but the key people that you have in your office that can just, yeah, no problem. We could estimate this, we could bill it, we could do everything about this in our sleep, then add another service. So that's why if somebody's thinking like, you know what, maybe I should get into, like land clearing or hardscaping, it's like we want to add that service. Okay, we'll start laying out the groundwork before you jump into it. Find out if there's a demand in your area for it. Because don't get me wrong, hardscaping's a wonderful thing, but depending on what part of the country you're in, it may be in high demand or it might not be in demand at all. And I'd hate for somebody to go into a new venture thinking that they're going to kill it because some of their favorite Instagram people or their favorite podcast host or somebody is endorsing it. And then it turns out they didn't do their homework, find out what their demographics were, find out what the actual demand and everything is in their industry or their area that they chose to work in, and find out that it's few and far between. And even though they could do amazing work, because the demand is not there or people can't afford to do those types of enhancements to their home, because they don't have volume, they're going to fall flat on their face, and it's just not going to be a good thing.
Yeah. And more of also a personal question that I had for you there is to how you think about diversification, especially outside of the business. But I just want to take a break from today's episode to talk about our sponsor, Cycle CPA. You may have a CRM or project management software in place, but what data are you using to ensure your estimating is accurate? Having a proper accounting setup and accurate bookkeeping done is key to understanding overhead expenses and other costs that must be recouped in your estimates. Cycle CPA is a remote bookkeeping and CFO firm that helps to connect the dots from the financial reports to the hardscape and landscape data needed in order to reach high profits. They provide landscape and hardscape industry benchmarking, job costing, financials by service line, advisory meetings, and much more. Cycle CPA's team of accountants are specialized within the hardscape and landscape industry, and you can visit them at cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. We've mentioned a few times about budgeting. I do want to ask you about overhead recovery systems, because this is something that's been on my mind quite a bit lately. I've got my own opinions on certain systems, and I always want to challenge that and also get other people's opinions, and either challenge my opinions as well as or reaffirm my opinions. I don't know. But
Yeah,
John, what's your thoughts on overhead recovery systems and what you think of what you use in your business personally, or what you look to for project-based businesses versus recurring? I don't know, but your thoughts on overhead recovery system.
yeah, I would love that. I'm getting perked up about this discussion. I know some people are going to be like, "Oh, this guy's talking too much," but no, seriously, I know it's sort of it's not a sexy thing, it's not a shiny thing, it's not something that people get excited about, but choosing the right overhead recovery system is very important in your business. And what we're talking about, I'll just give like a couple examples. You know, the very like I don't want to say mainstream, but what's the it's kind of like general accounting practices, you know, your gap, I can't remember I'm not sure what the term is that I'm looking for here. But when it comes to overhead recovery systems, there's several that come to mind. You've got I'll spell them out and then, or you know what I mean. You've got your single overhead recovery system, which is technically SOARS, SORS. You've got your doors, same thing, dual overhead recovery system, and then you have your MORS, multiple overhead recovery systems. Those three are kind of like the ones that really stand out with a lot of, when you say overhead recovery, I think for most people that know what that is, those three will generally pop up. Now, there's pros and cons to each and every one. I don't know how deep you want to go into it. I'm going to kind of give like a crash course 101 if that,
Yeah,
because I don't,
absolutely.
but the thing is, like with single is like, let's just go with SOARS first. That sounds bad. Nobody wants SOARS. But it's very easy, because what you would do is you just basically, you know what your, like going from like my point of view, you would know what your break even point is, and then you could just mark up accordingly. The problem with that is if you mark everything up the same, there might be certain aspects, like say when you're giving an estimate, that could, just by marking it up in the one category, it could actually lose you work, even though it's easier to manage on your end. You might be way outside the ballpark because it can, or you might be really low. You know, it all depends. Like there could be two businesses that technically do the same thing, but their break even points could be completely different. So like if the guy down the road is saying we charge $200 an hour for work, that might work for him. But then the next guy's like, might be really equipment heavy and labor heavy, and he could try to compete with that, or he could just say, you know what, our break even's 300 and works from that. I'm just throwing that out because if we're talking about hardscaping, a lot of times hardscaping, we have big boy equipment. We're talking about the giant earth movers and things. I know a lot of guys, I'm thinking, I'm going back to my construction days.
Yeah.
All the huge equipment that we had on site, But anyway, just don't pay attention to like the dollar amounts that I'm throwing out. It's just for reference. But anyway, if you have that single overhead recovery system where you're only charging one, you're just marking everything up one percentage way, like I said, it simplifies it for you as the business owner to know, like, oh yeah, we're making 30% on this. Or, but the problem is it might not be as accurate as with the other systems.
Right.
Like dual overhead recovery system. Basically same concept, except maybe your labor rate. We'll just take two key points out of that whole thing. The labor might be 15% marked up, and then your materials might be marked up 100%. Okay, so people are like, "What? That's crazy!" It's like, no. You're, in one point you're operating at a 50% margin. That's when you mark up everything 100%. that 15% that you marked it up is pretty low. It's like you're actually only what, like 10, not even 10%. But anyway, you're operating at that margin. So like when you put the two together, you might be at let's just say 40% margin, know, which is good margin, but it's just it gets a little bit more complicated, but the thing is when you dial it in that way, your estimates get even better. They get more niched in. And then we'll just save not the last, because I don't use the Moores. But anyway, you've got the Moores, the multiple overhead recovery system. And that is great for a guy like me. If you, like, say, Mike, you come to me and you go, Pajak, I need help because this is a very complicated system. And I go, yes, it is. And you need my help. And don't get me wrong, it's a good system, but it is very complicated because you're talking about, like, you could basically have a different margin or a different markup for each segment. So you could say, this is to make it easier to understand. What I'm saying is, like, your labor rate would be one markup percentage. It would be whatever it is, say 10%, 15%. And your materials might be on this job might be 50%. And your overhead for your office staff and just to keep things rolling, not your indirect labor and your administration is at this percentage. Okay. So you could break it down into however you want to do. It's like, your equipment cost recovery would be at another percentage point. So you're sitting there and it's like, yeah, you could really dial everything in, but it takes, like, it's almost like you have to have a degree and a really powerful system, like either CRM or like Excel spreadsheets and whatever it is that you're going to be using. It's like it's not, unless you have a good system set up, it's hard to turn those over and make sense of them. Now, like I said, it's like great for a guy like me because it's like, yeah, I got you hooked and come on in, the water's fine. You're going to be paying me now for a while. And I'm not greedy like that or anything, but I really don't have any clients that hire me for doing estimates and things. But that's like one of the biggest disadvantages of the Moore system, in my opinion. So I know I've talked for a long time. Michael, what's your, how do you feel about that?
It makes,
they hit the bases on that.
Yeah, it makes total sense to me. I feel like Moore's is more so for the consultants because it'll keep them employed for quite some time there. Also, it's difficult, especially, it also depends on the business, right? Like, for example, my business, we do hardscaping, but sometimes we do maintenance for hardscapes. And those come with same division, same crew, but those come with differing materials. So with Moore's, you have to be able to budget your materials. And if I enter a season and I don't know how much of my time is going to be allocated to maintenance and how much of my time is going to be dedicated to design build, which carries vastly different material costs, I'm not going to have my numbers dialed in for a Moore's system. It doesn't make sense for that. Same thing as if you are doing, because hardscaping business will do drainage, they'll do maintenance for hardscapes, design build. There's just so many different things that the same crew can be doing. And those carry so many different material costs that you just can't accurately, in my opinion, budget materials to be able to accurately mark up your materials to make your overhead for that.
Yeah, that's particularly why I generally don't use the Moore system.
Mm-hmm.
I have it's almost like a time and material, because what it's based off of, like when we do estimates, and one of the reasons why when going back to my construction days, when I would bid the jobs, I came at it from an approach of time and material. Now no matter what, we would still bid the job as one whole, because the difference with time and material is, like, if you're on a job, and let's just put this into our world again with hardscape and landscaping, you know, it's going to be very hard to find a client that is willing to say, here's the open checkbook. If your guys work 40 hours this week and 60 hours the next week, then that's fine. And if you end up running through this much material, then yeah, okay, we'll write the check for it. It's very difficult to find a client that's like that. And I don't really recommend trying to bid a job like that. I bid the jobs as a package. And like most of us, like I would probably say 99% of us do that. So but the approach that I would take is from a time and T&M type perspective. And that way, once I had production rates in place, I could know that it's like, you know, what I do is I look at like all of our equipment, all of our setups, like our trucks, our trailers, everything is like a unit. So I know if truck 1 goes out, it's equipped with X amount of things. That truck is its own, you know, line item on my end. I don't show that to the client, but on my end, I look at that and I go, if that thing's gone for a day, it needs to make, let's just say $800, okay, to recover. Like, again, don't take these numbers to heart, but whatever it is, if it rolls, let's just bring it back down into like normal people's, you know, price range. Let's just say it's $200 for that truck for the day. Okay, well, you got your $200 truck. Well, who goes in that truck? Oh, there's laborers, right? Oh, well, each one of these laborers is how much an hour? Okay, whatever it is per hour. I don't want to confuse anybody, but it's like, boom. All right, well, now, you know, you add other things like, oh, it's going to have trailer number 5 on it. Well, I know what trailer number 5 has on it. And this is traditionally like, this is the equipment that goes on that thing. So when it goes out the door, that whole package, it's like, all right, for that whole package, just to go out is, you know, $500 a day. That's our break even. We're not talking about, you know, so I could look at it and go, all right, what's our margin? What are we trying to hit? Is it a 30% margin, 40%, whatever it is? And then we mark up accordingly.
Right.
So it's a much simpler system. I don't have to like guess at it. It's like, it's very modular in a way, because if, like I said, hey, truck 1 went out and it took trailer 5 with it. Well, trailer 5's out on a different job. Well, guess what? Trailer 4 is very similar in the way it's built out. It's not exact, but it's very similar, and it has all the tools that the guys would need. Boom, let's send that thing out.
Gotcha.
Price might be similar or more, a little more or less, whatever it is, you know. But when you start systematizing things, your business like that, including your quotes, and how you recover your overhead, it's consistent, and you could really dial in those numbers. Like, you know, we generally, with business, I generally try to have like a projected, what's your target goal for the season in this division, not just the company in general, because it's like, hey, you know what, the business needs to hit, you know, 500K this year. All right, well, you told me you got 3 different services. To me, that translates into 3 different divisions. How much does your mate, you know, you Michael, you mentioned that you got, you know, you do hardscape installs, but you also do the maintenance. So I would break that down, and let's just say you have 2 divisions. One is the maintenance, one is the install. Okay, how much money do you anticipate, or what's your target for just your installs this year? How much do you anticipate? How much are you going to do with maintenance? Is this from recurring clientele that they've had work done with you, and then you just continue year after year to come back, like install mulch, or, you know, plant new plantings around the hardscaping, or you know, just touch things up here and there, you know, whatever it might be. And when you start breaking it down like that, it's like, wow, all right, now you just, instead of having this big chunk number, because guys are like, oh, you need to make $1 million. It's like, okay, $1 million is still like a goal for a lot of people. It's like they get that number just pops in their head, and they're like, I just need to make $1 million. It's like, all right, well, how are you going to make that $1 million? Is it all going to be in installs? Is it all going to be in maintenance? How's that work? So that's why when you break it down and you could start casting the projections for each one of your divisions, it adds up very quickly. And then it's like, yeah, I can do this. Or, ooh, that's a lot. That's a bigger chunk of the elephant that I bit off a little bit more of that elephant that I could chew right now. So,
John, one last question if you have the time for it
yeah, I got time.
here. Equipment, where do you include that? Would you incorporate equipment as an overhead budget, or would you say assign equipment to a project when it's going out to recoup the costs of that equipment? Just your thoughts in terms of how you incorporate equipment to recoup the cost of the equipment.
So that goes back to the divisions within a business. So when we're doing the budget to plan out for like the season to find out what our break even point is to hit our goal, we take account for all the. Let's just go like a simple thing like with mowing. You're not okay if we have mowing equipment. It's not going to be out on a hardscape install project. It's not going to be on a gutter cleaning project. Okay. So when we're building that budget for the mowing division, it's going to be included in there. And then we would have to, you obviously there's a lot to it. You have to know your production rates and how many clientele you need to hit that number. But when you do, it's just going to break it. The way that I do it specifically is it breaks everything down to where no matter what, when you roll out with that equipment and you're charging the right amount, it's not just some magic number we pulled out of the air. It is strategic. It is planned. We sell that job. We book that job. We know that that's, let's just say it's, $60, per cut or whatever. I don't really get nitty gritty and say, okay, every percentage point comes out of it, but like for every like $100, in the business, or for every whatever, it is a percentage, but it's not based off the 60, but for like every $100 or every $1,000 of the business, we're going to take that money from our, now I'm getting a little bit more detailed here, but like when it comes into our business as income, it gets filtered into different bank accounts. It's kind of a combination of the envelope system from Dave Ramsey, which was actually cash management. You just put cash in different envelopes. Well, nowadays, because where I bank, I get free checking accounts. This is more of a, like Mike McAllowitz profit first type organization of money. I don't put my profits first. I know that's a weird way of saying it, but anyway, he basically just does the same thing as the envelope system, except he puts the money in bank accounts. So it kind of comes into our income one, and then it gets filtered out. It's like, all right, we did X amount of money this week in this division. So now, we're going to put $500 towards our equipment replacement fund. And here's our maintenance fund. X amount of dollars goes into that. And it's all predetermined from the budget that we made before the season started.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense. And John, I did lie there. I do have one last question for you.
Yeah, 5 more questions. It's your show, man.
One last question for you, I promise. What did we not cover here that you would want to tease our audience with budgets, break evens, bottom lines? What else would they be looking forward to if they were to ever go to johnpajak.com and see more about the budgets, break evens, bottom lines there?
I got to do a better job at marketing that a little bit. Most people, it's always like kind of a word of mouth, and then people are just excited because it changes their business. I'm too busy changing people's lives to actually put out better content, but that's going to change soon. But no, really, I mean, when you go through it, it's a lot more detailed than what most people anticipate. They think it's just going to be me telling them what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. What it really is, it's not a coaching workshop. It is a true consulting workshop. And what I do is I break down all of their numbers. We go through it before they even we even meet. I give them a few worksheets that they have to fill out, and some guys get scared about it because they're, unfortunately, I haven't figured out a good way of like breaking it down and saying, okay, uh, you're at the top echelon. When they look at it, they're like, I'm never going to have like TV marketing ads. What the hell? Why is there a place for this? It's like, don't worry about it. It's sometimes I think I keep it there just to kind of keep guys thinking like, I could get there. There's possibilities because, it goes, even the worksheets, they go in great detail about like, what everything on your business end, not your personal finances, but your business end, how much we're going to figure out exactly what it costs for you to open the doors every day. I also ask what their plans are, because some guys don't want to grow to like multiple crews. They just want to have a successful business where it's just either them or maybe one other person. So depending on what those goals are and what they are, what we do is we just go really in depth with all their numbers, scrub everything out, and then find out, break it down into a budget for each division of their business and find out what their total revenue goal is. And based off of all the data that they give me, I will then compile that into a big report, and, it teaches you how to do a lot of business stuff, numbers wise, but it breaks down in detail, like what it actually costs you, what your break even point is to operate your business. And from there, I offer some suggestions as to how to be profitable. That's the bottom line part of it. Sometimes you don't have to listen to me. I've been in places where I've given suggestions and they're like, our market will support more than that. And I'm like, that's great, because now you'll have more profits. If you don't have to not charge that. You could charge more. That's fine. As long as you're charging at least this minimum here. Some guys get confused and they think that they need to charge what the break even point is. And I'm like, no, your break even's where you're not making money or losing money. You're just stagnant. You're not going to grow at all. So anyway, through that entire experience, it's sometimes it's a gut check for guys, and a lot. I mean, actually, I would say for almost everybody that goes through it, it is a gut check. But at the same time, at the end of it, they're very happy that they went through it, because now they have a better understanding of what their numbers actually are, and they have the confidence to now go out and bid without worrying about if they're not charging enough. I think the biggest thing I could give to someone, especially business owners, is that confidence, and that just knowing straight up, like, I'm not afraid anymore. I could help take that fear away from them, so that when they go out and they are talking to their potential customers or their regular customers, that they could just charge what they need to and not be they don't have to apologize for it. Because there's, I don't know why, but it seems like profits, when people start talking about profit, they get guilt. It's almost like, they feel guilty about it. And there shouldn't be you shouldn't have guilt about trying to, create a better life for you and your family and for those that are working under you. When our employees, we take care of them. We're proud of that because they have families. We don't want to like deny that, like, oh yeah, we're going to make the money, and then we're going to deny the people that make this happen a chance at having a good life. It's the only reason that we can do that is when we are profitable. We're providing a service for people that want the service done, and first and foremost, we're making them happy. And then for us to continue to do that, we need to be profitable. So we need to have, good employees around. We need to take care of them. which therefore takes care of their family. And then obviously we take care of ourselves and our family.
John, thank you so much for your time and to do this interview. Got tons of other questions that we could always go down rabbit holes if you'd ever want to join me for another interview in the future sometime. But for now, I think that's a good way to end it there. John, where can our audience go to find out more about you, break-evens, budgets, break-evens, bottom lines, your podcast, wherever you want to send them to?
Sure. You could find us basically anywhere for the Profits with Pajak podcast, Apple, Spotify, all the Audibles, Libsyn, all of them, whatever you listen to, it's there. And we release 3 episodes per week, so we're very consistent with it, and we hope that you check that out. And again, like you mentioned before, Michael, johnpajak.com. You get more information about our budgets, break-evens, and bottom lines workshop. I have some courses that are coming out too, where it's more self-taught. If you're nervous about talking to me in person or anything like that, or if you're not ready to dedicate pretty much a day of your life to the live workshop, we've got some do-it-yourself courses coming out, and it's all going to be at johnpajak.com.
Perfect. John, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. If I could ask you for anything at this point in time, it would be a rating and review. If you are on Apple Podcasts, you can go there, leave a rating, leave a written review. We have a few here that I'm just going to read, and we're going to get into doing this because I've been meaning to do this for quite some time here. All the way back from 2019, we've got Jacob Reed. And I believe that is Jacob Reed from MQuip, who sell vacuum lifting equipment. Title is very informative, 5 stars. Highly recommend listening if you're in the landscaping industry. Mike is discussing a diverse range of important topics with leaders in the industry. Another one from Scott T. Lloyd from Lloyd's Landscape Contracting. Title is awesome content, 5 stars. Always good listening to these podcasts. You're going to learn something new every time. And one more for today's episode. Please keep the content coming. Super inspiring. Highly recommend. 5 stars there from Crazy Daddy Bird. Thank you so much for everyone listening into today's episode with John Pajak there. And if you need bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for $200 off their services there. And if you are looking to add outdoor lighting to your portfolio, to your projects, reach out to Inlight Outdoor Lighting at Inlight Design. That's INLITE Design on Instagram. Follow them and message them to get that conversation started. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.